Now I've got to go. I've got to go save a kitten.
Christine and Shane, welcome back to the Undraped Artist Podcast.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys. So we just had an amazing weekend. Was it 2 weekends ago or was it just last weekend?
You shouldn't ask
2
me.
weekends ago. Yeah.
2 weekends ago.
May
Yeah.
11th through the 14th.
Yeah, it was an awesome weekend in Washington, D.C. for the Portrait Society of America conference. And first of all, I want to start by thanking you two and all the other people involved for making an incredible event. It was the highlight of my year. And I brought, I think, like 12 students, and they were just like on cloud nine the whole time. And we're still talking about it here at the studio.
We always think they can't get any better than the previous year. We'll have such a great year. We think, oh, we'll never top this. And then the next year, it seems like there's something about it that is better in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's start with that. So Shane, why don't you give me some thoughts on what you thought went really well at the conference this year?
Well, I think the thing that stood out more than anything was there was this incredible energy. There was this sort of great optimism about the future, about what we were doing, about being together. I think that probably it's a result of the last few years we've been through and the struggles of staying isolated. And, artists that paint portraits and figures are a little bit different than other types of artists in that we really feed off of being with people. Mm-hmm. And I think that particularly, certainly in my case, not being around my colleagues or artists that I admire or artists that I have long wanted to meet or be with. I think it's just so exciting when you're in person together. And so I love the energy this year. I think there was another thing that was really exciting, and Chris probably can add to this. We had a lot of young people this year. I think that was a change from years past. The organization is getting older, but the membership's getting younger. So that's an exciting combination.
Yeah. What do you attribute that to?
I think we're doing something right. I think we're also, I think we have something that artists are craving and young artists are struggling to find the kind of resources that we're making available. My daughter is a good example. As you know, Jeff, she's 21 years old, decided to self-educate because she couldn't find the kind of information that she wanted to find out there in a structured, say, 4-year institution or many other types of schools that are teaching art. And so, as she said, I'm going to pick my own faculty. And what the Portrait Society is able to do is be a part of that education for her and for many other young people who can't find the things that they're looking for in that more traditional environment. So I think that's one thing we're doing right. What do you think? What's some other things, Chris?
I agree. I think there was such an energy of connecting with other artists and a generosity too. I felt like everybody was so generous with the information that they knew and willing to share it with other people. And that's the notes that we're receiving back, that we had a lot of first timers. And I think that contributed to the excitement. And the thank you notes that we're getting back is that they were so impressed that people were willing to come and give up their time and share information. That, one woman wrote me and said, I thought there were secrets that people were like, hoarding about technique and methods and how you handle a client. But she said, I came to the conference and people freely gave that information. I did have a thought about the young people that are attending. I do think that they're very connected on social media. And so word of mouth, we had a lot of young people come last year, and I think they spread the word. You have to come to the Portrait Society conference. And we saw that, first timers and young people. So I felt really good about the whole event, and just you could get on an elevator and hear somebody talking about, did you just see that program we attended? And you got to go tonight to this program. And just the energy was very, very, very positive and really contagious.
Yeah.
Well, it is. And when they have people like you, Jeff, and other professional artists that would take time away from their studios to come and freely share with them it just absolutely,
That's the
first
key.
off, it blows their mind. And secondly, as one lady wrote me yesterday, she said, I couldn't believe how approachable these artists were that have, these incredible careers, and they've come to spend a few days with us and share. And, so I think, you're a part of that formula, you and your friends that are willing to come and be so generous with your time and sharing your knowledge. It makes all the difference.
Well, I think we all enjoy it so much. It doesn't really feel like a sacrifice. And like you said, you get to be around your colleagues, people who you relate to, people who you have a lot in common with. So, it's funny because throughout the year, I'm kind of antisocial. And then I get to the Porch Society and it's like, well, these are my people. And all of a sudden, all I want to do is socialize and stay up till 3 a.m, and talk and talk and talk. It's a great environment that way. But I have a theory also about the young people, and I could be wrong. It's just a theory, but I feel like this year was the 25th anniversary, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. But I think you guys, any organization like this is going to get the low-hanging fruit first. And the low-hanging fruit is the people who have the extra time, the extra funds, right? And just the ability to travel on a whim, right? And that's going to be the more established older people. But now the word's gotten out that the quality of this thing is so good that young people are now starting to make sacrifices, so and where they wouldn't have before, but they're hearing about it, they're seeing how incredible it is and hearing about how incredible it is, and they're making financial sacrifices. But that said, also, you guys are so generous in that you're providing a ton of scholarships for these young people. Maybe you could comment a little bit on that, like where those come from, how they're funded, how many you give out.
Sure. Jeff, one of the events that we do at the conference, it's really fun and fast and entertaining, but it's a 6x9, and it's where artists are invited, either faculty or award winners, and they create these small little gems of portraits. They're 6x9 inches, and we auction them off during the 6x9 mystery art sale. And you actually find out the artist after you purchase the painting that you want, the painting or sculpture that you want. And those funds we use to fund the scholarships. And so this year we funded 35 scholarships.
Holy cow.
And we received 125 applications. So it was very difficult to make those selections. And we've heard from a number of them and what it meant to them. And they were just overwhelmed by the generous nature of all of the speakers and the fellow attendees, that they would take their time away from their studios and away from commission work and come and teach. So
Jeff,
that's how we fund most of them.
Chris and Jeff, think what a beautiful thing that is. So we send these artists these 6x9 panels. They produce a beautiful example of their work on as a gift to the society. They send it in. We put them up. Then our fellow artists can purchase them for a reasonable price. And then all of that money turns right around and is given back to the artists so that they can in turn learn more. And it's the most amazingly beautiful thing.
It is. I agree. I love every part of it. I love that the artists take their time to create it. Then they donate it to the Portrait Society. And then people that are there at the event get to collect a work for a really reasonable price. Mm-hmm. And then that money funds other artists to learn. And so it's a full circle event. And I love everything about it.
$250 or $275, I forget.
It's $250. Yep.
$250. You get to pick up an original Jeff Hines or Bert Silverman.
Bert Silverman donated this year, and so Max Ginsburg donated. So it's fun. It's really fun if you get to win, the opportunity to win one. But just even viewing the whole work as an exhibit is really a great time also.
The thing about that's really amazing is it's not just reasonable, it's a steal. Especially, there's a huge range of artists there, and there are some that the 6x9, they're earlier in their careers. Everyone's great, don't get me wrong, but some are earlier in their careers, not as established. $250 is a great deal. But then there are others like Burton Silverman and Max Ginsburg and a whole bunch of others that people are just swarming around because they know that if they had to buy that 6x9 on the market, it would be thousands, if not more than thousands, tens of thousands for that little painting. And these artists, it'd be better for them to just donate $250 to the society, but they offer these paintings instead, which are worth
One of the things
much,
that we
much
learned
more.
this year, Jeff, by this incredible crowd we had, 750 plus artists, and as you were there, it was packed shoulder to shoulder, and we found out that we've got to get some bigger baskets, because for those folks that don't know how it works, if there's more than one person that would like to buy the painting, they have to put their name tag in a bucket. And I saw many examples of moments where the bucket was overflowing with name tags, and there was no real good way to sort of shake them up. So that people were doing their best to hold the bucket and stick their hand down in to pull one of the names out. So we'll get a bigger basket for those popular.
Yeah, you need really big
artists.
buckets, because they don't even shake up. It's like the last person who puts it on is the winner. You can't even shake the thing.
We're working on that.
Yeah, but and I've yet to win one. So if you guys have any, after we get off camera, if you guys have any hints on how to, kind of cheat the system.
I tried 3 times. I lost all 3 this year.
I didn't win any this year.
Yeah, it's tough. But anyway, it's an awesome program. And how many paintings did you get submitted?
So we had 120 this year. So that's the largest participation that we've had.
Unbelievable. That's a big chunk of change. And pretty much all of them sold, or all of them sold?
I think all of them sold except 6. And so, that's really good.
That is incredible.
And
that'll provide a lot of scholarships next year.
Yeah, that's incredible.
For attendees.
That's incredible. So tell me a little bit about some of the events. Maybe just, and we can, at this point, let me know, Chris, when you want me to pull up some of these photos. But, maybe talk a little bit about these events, because we've mentioned events, but some people who haven't gone may not understand exactly what that means, because there is some variation. So maybe, Chris, you could start with talking a little bit about what those events look like.
Sure. I think our opening program, Jeff, really just gets everybody's juices flowing. It's called the Face Off, and it's 18 artists that come together in groups of 3, and they paint from 4:30 to 7:30, and they different mediums. There was drawing, pastel, oil, sculpture, and they create. They get pretty far along into the portrait during that time, and you can walk around that room and watch the progress of each work being created, or you can sit down and watch a group of 3 artists from start to finish. And so it's like a big icebreaker, and I think it just kicks off the conference. That's a picture you've got on the screen now of James Gurney, and he was painting in a group of 3. Rick Caselli's behind him. He did a sculpture. And then Dominique Medici is beside him to the right, and she painted. And so it's just a wonderful time. We're all in the grand ballroom. It's a 12,000 square foot ballroom, and we're all in there together. This year we had just right at 800 artists, so it's one of our larger events, and a wonderful way to kick off the evening program. And then we do back-to-back events, because right when that ended at 7:30, we also had a program called the Future Generations, and that was 4 young artists that painted 2 in each room from live models, and that was very well received. And so I think that one that you just showed before was a drawing workshop. We did incorporate this year a lot of hands-on. That was some feedback. One thing that we do after the conference is we send out a survey, and we read through those very carefully. And each year we improve and add to the program depending on what the feedback is. And some of that feedback was, we get inspired and we get energized, and we want to be able to put, start drawing ourselves. And so we added a free drawing room on Friday night, and you could go in there and draw. And then also we added quite a few hands-on program. Don Whitelaw did a hands-on program. And then there were, I think, 4 drawing workshops. And then we also added some pre-conference workshops. And that's where you all day with one artist. So 9 to 4. And we had 3 of those, Susan Lyons,
we had the
Scott
sculpting
Burdick,
ahead too,
and Mary
with Rick Casali. Remember, Chris?
And then Rick Casali, that was a new program this year, and they sculpted the planes of the head, in clay, and they walked out of there. There was only 30 in there because of this, the size of the room and what he could teach, but it's something we're definitely going to offer again. Every person that walked out of there just came out energized and so positive.
Was that a pre-conference event?
So the Rick Casali was a breakout session.
Oh, that
The
was a
three
breakout
pre-conference
session.
events
Okay.
we had were Mary White, Scott Burdick, and Susan Lyon, and those were all very well received also. So we'll repeat that again. And it does give a lot of people, it doesn't cost that much more to come in one day early, but to be able to have a workshop from 9 to 4 with someone and add it on to the conference really worked out for people.
Yeah. So can you explain the difference between the breakout sessions and the main stage demos?
Sure. So this actually came from a previous survey about 10 years ago. People said they wanted the opportunity to gather in a little bit smaller group. When you have 800 people in one room, now I think that this year, one thing that made the quality of the program so good is the AV that we had. They added some remote robotic cameras, and it gave us the opportunity to show more on the stage of the model, the painting that they were creating or the drawing that they were doing, and then also audience and an overview shot. And that, to me, helped the quality of the program. We do have large screens. They're 20 feet by 20 feet on either side of the stage, so that wherever you're sitting, you have a really good view of what's happening on that main stage. But people did ask us, would you provide us an opportunity to gather in a little bit smaller crowd so that we could, feel more comfortable either asking questions or offer an interactive session. And Dawn Whitelaw did that last year for our test. And she did a presentation where she gave, a 15-minute presentation, and then you did the exercise she introduced. And we repeated that across the board this year. She did a class on backgrounds. Dominique Medici did a quick sketch with instructions, and all of those were very well received.
That's great. Shane, did you want to say anything about that?
No, other than the fact that this was probably the most hands-on conference we've ever had. I really loved that. I think artists particularly, you remember, Jeff, in the years past, sitting in lectures through the day, demonstrations, and what's the one thing that would happen through the evening? Artists would set up in these little areas all over the hotel trying to draw and paint because they couldn't wait to try to work on the things that they had heard that day, and also it just inspired them. So giving them a chance to actually do that as part of the conference, I think, makes a huge difference. And it gives them a chance to sort of get that off their chest. I mean, they just want to get to work for a little while and see what they can do after listening to some of the artists and hearing or seeing some of the artists' work. So I loved it. I think it was a really nice addition this year. Really have to applaud the staff, which were literally working daylight to dark. They started very early in the morning, 6 a.m. You started to see the first folks appear that are working on the all volunteer staff from the artists that come in. We do have a few full-time employees, but this is mostly people that are just wanting to give of their time. And then, they would be up until 12, 1 o'clock at night as we would conclude the evening. So it was packed every minute, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a little disappointed, Chris, because, I don't get any time with you and Kim and any of the other staff because you guys never stop moving. It's like, oh, hey, nice to see you. See you next year for 5 minutes. But I mean, I appreciate all the work you put into it. But yeah, you guys are moving at 90 miles an hour nonstop.
Well, it's really a labor of love. We love it. And we're so encouraged by the positive response and how life-changing. People write us, very heartfelt letters, and they're sincere in that it changed their life. It changed the direction of their life, the direction of their work. And, really, that's what it's all about, is just to encourage excellence in portraiture and to share with your fellow artists. And I do think that generosity is just some kind of contagious thing from from the faculty willing to step away from, their commissioned work to the volunteers that come and staff the different areas. We have 35 volunteers that come and work like that. And, it creates a kind of connection that I think before the Portrait Society was missing.
Yeah. By the way, the technology of those jumbotrons and the digital, filming technology. I mean, that has, in 25 years, you just cannot. If you're my daughter's age, you just cannot imagine how much it has.
It has improved so much. Yeah.
Yeah. This
picture. And this year, Jeff, we had 100 people on virtually this year too.
Oh, no kidding. Well, I couldn't find a better picture. It doesn't really do it justice because of the perspective on this photo, but that's a 20-foot screen, and there's one on the other side of the stage as well. It's huge, and it really doesn't do it justice. So that's the only one I could find.
It's like you're sitting right over their shoulder. It does, and the quality. It's a 20K projector, and that quality really has made, like Shane said, when we first started, I think it was a 3K projector, and we're up to 20K now.
20K? So, you're kidding me.
Yeah, the quality is really tremendous.
And Jeff, when 20 years ago, you're on stage trying to do a demonstration, the size of the cameras were so large that you were very constrained as the artist. You could barely move because they were trying to get them right over your shoulder so they could get right on top of the canvas. And then there was always this insane amount of light that was required for them to be able to project it up onto the screen. And so you would get this terrible glare as the artist, not as the person viewing it on the screens. And one of my favorite and most remarkable moments of my entire life of seeing a guy who said the show must go on was about 20 years ago. Ray Kinsler was doing a demonstration on stage. Here's this master artist. And all through the demo, he kept stepping back and looking at the Jumbotron, and then he would go back to paint. And after this beautiful demonstration, I went up on stage to help him clean up his materials, his palette, etc. And when I stood in front of his canvas, I could not see anything. It was total glare. You could not see the painting almost at all. And I turned and I looked at him and I said, I called him Everett, and I said, Everett, you can't see anything. And he said, oh my God, I know. I had to look at the Jumbotron to see what stroke I just put down. Didn't you see me looking at the screen?
Oh my
Every time I would put a stroke down, I would have to look up to see what I had just done. And I thought,
what a stud.
Guy, I mean, you're talking about a star. The show must go on. I mean, he just pulled it off by looking at the screen every time he would make a stroke. So now when you get on stage, I was watching the artists working this year. The lighting was beautiful.
Yeah.
The cameras are so small. And not only is the artist able to see what they're doing and have a good time doing it, but not only can you sit there and watch them make the stroke in person, but if you want a closer look, you look up at those giant screens and you can see, every hair on the brush as it goes down to make the stroke. So it's a phenomenal interaction and experience in this one hall with several hundred artists. You feel intimate at the same time. You know that you're very much a part of something that's happening in the very moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, can we talk about some of those events? Who were some of the artists? Obviously, we know, I mean, you already mentioned that I was there, but who are some of the other artists and some of the events that took place?
Jeff, that's one thing I wanted to talk about was we tried something new this year. And so Adrian Stein and Anthony Ryder demonstrated on Friday morning, and you were the moderator for them. And we haven't done that before, and it was very well received. And in all the surveys, they asked us to do that again.
Oh, really?
And I think it helped the artist as well as the audience. How was that experience for you? Because Anthony Ryder drew, and Adrian Stein worked in oils, and then you were on stage with them.
Right. Yeah. This is a picture of that right here. I thought it was great. I'd be happy to help in doing that again anytime. I thought it was fun. I mean, I was like a kid in the candy store getting up there.
And it can be challenging to paint and teach at the same time. So I think that gave them an opportunity to be able to paint while you were talking and get a little farther, and then take a break and then talk. And so we got
they didn't have to constantly think about what they needed to say because you were prompting them, and then that sort of flowed naturally as a conversation. I thought it was a fantastic.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I wondered if it worked out. I mean, I felt like it was a great experience, but I wondered what your guys's or what you heard from the audience. So I'm glad to hear that it went well.
Very, very positive. Now, we did open the conference with a presentation by Bert Silverman, he's widely known as one of the best portrait and real estate artists in America, and he's 95 years old. He's still taking portrait commissions, and he did join us by video, but it was a great, inspiring way to open the conference. And then that Friday afternoon, we broke into the smaller classes, and that was a good collection of drawing. James Gurney gave a presentation, and of course Don Whitelaw, and then also on that. This was really highly rated in the surveys. I read through a lot of them last night, and this was a panel presentation with Mary White, James Gurney, and Shane, and Wendy Caparel Green moderated it. And it was called Moving Targets. And so there was a short presentation by each person and then a question and answer. And so I think people enjoyed the interaction, and then also, the tidbits of advice from each person. So that one was very well received too.
I probably told a couple of stories I shouldn't have told, but that's all right.
What stories are those? Oh, you mean at the thing, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't name any names. I left out names.
I can't imagine you did anything any less appropriate than I generally do in my presentations. So,
okay, I'll agree with you with that. I think we're okay. I think I'm all right.
Yeah, I mean, I might be the first guy who ever had to take a bathroom break during the middle of his presentation.
I love that. That was a great moment.
Oh man, but I think I had the audience.
Just put this on hold real quick.
I think the audience believed me that I was getting a kitten out of a tree, though. I'm pretty sure they believed me. So tell me about this one here. What was this presentation?
Sure. So Louis Carr did a presentation on composing a portrait. He was very well prepared and had a lot of presented a lot of information in a short amount of time. It was very well received. Also, you painted with Rose Franson this year, and the model was Judy Carducci, who's been a member for a very long time. She's 91 years old. She traveled from Ohio, and we mic'd her also. And here's a picture of it now.
Mm-hmm.
And both portraits, I thought, turned out fantastic, and it was just really wonderful to hear her share about her life, and I think she even recited a poem while
oh my goodness, there's been all of these
people were in tears
written. Yeah, we've had a bunch of emails of people saying that they were absolutely brought to tears watching you all paint and her reciting Rudyard Kipling, I think. Somebody she was reciting someone a poem from memory, and it just evidently touched. I was doing something else and missed that part. I hate I missed that part.
Oh man. Well, don't you record all this stuff though? And so that brings up another point. I mean, I want to talk a little more about this, but that brings up another point. Can people see this after the fact?
They can. So we have recorded it all, and so it is available, and we'll be posting next week on our website how they can sign up and then be able to view we recorded all of them except the breakout sessions. Everything that was on the main stage is recorded.
Okay. So Judy, what was so inspiring with her and my students, because I brought several students who are 50s, 40s, and even close to 60. And they occasionally they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm getting old. Can I do this? And I'm going to have enough time, blah, blah. And the poem related to her, she talked about how she started just before she turned 60 and then had a wonderful, fulfilling 30-year career, or almost 30-year career, up and still painting to this day. And then recited this poem that just brought, I was just a very hopeful, inspiring poem to anyone, but especially to, at least as reported by my personal students, to the older students who are like, yeah, I can do this. It doesn't matter that I'm 55 years old or 60 years old. I still have time. I can do this. So it was really inspiring.
Yeah, I love that. It's like when Ray Kensler built his dream studio in the country when he was 80 years old, and he worked there almost 13 years. I mean, it was pretty. Think how wonderful and bold it is to be 80 and say, I think I'm going to build a new studio.
That's inspiring. Yeah, that's
Yeah. So
inspiring.
Judy is very much like that. We've got a lot of, I mean, Bert Silverman, same way, 95, still working in his studio every day, still taking commissions and working at the highest level. It's remarkable that, as Kinster said to me one time, the older you get, the more you will understand how fantastic and wonderful it is to wake up each day being so stimulated by what you do. And artists are that way. I mean, we're so driven to get up each day and to try it again. And in this pursuit of growth and excellence, it's what this organization is all a part of. And every person that was there just wanted to grow. They just wanted to learn something new. They just wanted to get to that next step. And you know, the amount of responses we're getting back that people say that they had moments that were life changing is incredible. And I had a lady come up to me last year and just in tears, and I didn't know what she was really upset about at first, but she wasn't upset. She was actually excited, and she said
Hmm.
that she had just been in a class and had heard some things that had changed her forever. She said, I totally understand some things that I had been trying to understand for so long, and it was a light bulb moment for me. And it was very, very touching to see that.
That's awesome. So I have to thank you, Chris, because I actually recommended, and I'm sure you remember, but Rose and I, we did a thing which you invited us to do in Oklahoma. What was that, like
Oklahoma, I
5 years
remember.
ago or something? I can't even
Uh-huh.
remember. And
It was.
I already knew Rose, but we just loved working together so much that we actually requested that we get to paint together. So it was really kind of you to do it. And she is just
I
a
remember that
freaking
idea came from
riot.
there because you all stayed up both nights, Friday and Saturday night, just talking until like one
Uh-huh.
or two in the morning. And I think you might have even stayed an extra day. And but you know, you could tell that that synergy of your relationship, I think, came through in the demo too.
Oh yeah, I adore Rose. She's incredible and
Yeah.
such a talented painter. Such a talented painter. So are we missing anything as far as the events?
Well, that's the thing that I'm so impressed with, and that is that I don't think we do miss anything. I mean, we cover every aspect we can think of to cover all, you know, craft and technique, from drawing all the way through to color and composition. And I mean, there's been times when you think about Dawn's class, it was simply covering backgrounds. We have lectures and presentations on careers, on trying to build your career, how to market your work, how to sell your work to agencies and galleries, how to manage your studio, how to manage your time, how to work as an artist full time or part time and manage your family. We covered those kind of things. I mean, I really think, you know, Christine has been our executive director for 25 years, but she was married to an artist for over 35 years, Chris.
Yeah. 37 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
37 years. And so there's really, you can't imagine there's anyone with better training from the time that she was married to Ed as a very, very young bride, to learn, you know, to really learn the ropes of what it's like to live with an artist. And then what were the questions that he had and what were the challenges that he faced and his friends and colleagues. And so she really saw that from the very beginning, as did every artist that was a part of it. And, you know, since all of us are digging out our livings each day and each week and each year as artists or aspiring to do that, the questions that you have, we really believe that we help answer some of those. And if nothing else, we pose even more questions so that you can go back and try to problem solve. But I think that's the thing that is the strength of the organization, is that we really look at every facet of being an artist and all of the challenges that come with it, all the joys that come with it. And then we get to share with each other and learn. And I've never taught a single class that I don't feel like when I leave there that I've learned more than I've been able to share from my own students. And then that prepares me even more for my own work in the studio or for the next class or workshop that I'm teaching. And I think everyone leaves the Portrait Society each year feeling the same way. And so I really applaud Chris and the staff and all of the artists that work so hard to try to not only answer the questions that people have, but even pose more questions so that we can go back and ponder those as well.
Yeah, we had 28 faculty artists this year, and they worked hard to prepare before they came, and then while they were there, they all really did give of themselves.
Yeah,
You
it
know, one
was
thing,
incredible.
Jeff, I'd like to talk about is the banquet. It's really is the highlight
Okay. Yeah,
of the
let's
whole
talk about that.
conference. It's so inspiring. And,
Mhm.
you know, the artists that are selected as finalists, we had over 3,075 entries this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it was very competitive. And then those artists, they come and bring their original artwork on site to be judged. And so they really invest time and expense to travel to the conference and bring their selected work. And it really is a museum quality show,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. And when you go in there, you know, you just can spend, you know, any amount of time just, you know, looking at the work, you know, understanding maybe what the message that the artist was conveying in that painting and just being inspired. And we have so many artists that have written us and said, you know, I've entered 10 times, but it doesn't disappoint me. It challenges me that next year I'm going to create, you know, I'm going to improve my work and I'm going to enter again. And
So let's
so
talk
we
just a
had,
little bit, Chris, about as
yeah,
an example of that, our winner, Paul Newton, who is a phenomenal artist and painter from Australia, who not only has entered many times. He has several times. I'm saying this because he would tell you the same thing. He's not been a part of the room several times. His piece did not get in. He has been in the room several times and has not won the top award. But he was undaunted by that. He didn't stop entering. He kept on plugging away. And this year he was the grand prize winner of the not only the Draper Grand Prize, but the highest cash award we've ever given, $50,000 first place. And I just
Amazing.
love, yeah, I just absolutely love that he, you know, sort of didn't get frustrated by not winning the prize
he
or the
wasn't
top prize.
discouraged or deterred
He
at
wasn't
all.
discouraged. He was actually motivated to try even harder and even harder. And he entered this fantastic self-portrait that he had done during lockdown that had a sort of a very riveting, emotional impact to the viewer, as well as the, you know, technically it was so incredibly beautifully done. And so anyway, I just think that he's a perfect example of someone, you know, someone might say, oh, well, of course, Paul Newton won. Look how fantastic an artist he is. Well, Paul Newton has entered a lot of paintings that were quite fine, but that year's competition was maybe at some level that the judges didn't respond to his piece that year, but then the next year they would. And you know, I think the fact that he got in the room several times but still didn't win, but yet he kept coming back, says everything about him as a person. That he's driven to keep trying, and he, well, he rose to the occasion.
Yeah. So maybe, that brings up a question for me. Can you talk a little bit about how the judging process works? Because I'll make a comment before you answer that, and that is that I think part of the reason I can't speak for him, but I think part of the reason many of us don't get discouraged is because we understand that it's one part quality and excellence and one part taste, right? So it's like you've got to get your work to a certain level, but you also have to understand that it just takes entering and entering and entering until you end up the stars align and the judges happen to like your work. Because when I go into that room, I see a daunting task. Like, how in the world can you possibly pick a best one? And because they're all
Yeah,
at
yeah,
such high quality. And
yes.
so, I
Well,
mean,
and
maybe
think
you
about
could
it too,
comment on
Jeff.
how that's done.
Well, if you think about it too, if you're an artist entering, you also don't know what other pieces are being entered that year. And,
Right.
so what group of painting, sculpture, drawings you have to work from, that determines quite a bit. One of my favorite Ray Kinsler stories, sitting right here on this mantle to my right, I'm in Ray Kinsler's old studio, and on the mantle was a gold medal from the American Watercolor Society, and next to it was a rejection slip from the American Watercolor
Yeah, I've heard this
Society.
story. It's inspiring.
Yes. And so he had entered one year a watercolor, and it was rejected. And the
Not even a
following year,
finalist. Not even a
not even a
finalist.
finalist,
Yeah.
didn't even get into the show. The next year, show comes around, and he says, "Gee, I didn't take the time to do anything new. I don't have anything. I'm just going to enter the same piece I entered last year that was rejected." And that piece won the gold medal that year. And so, sitting here on his mantle, he used to have those two things. The same painting had won a gold medal one year; it was rejected the year before. Well, what changed? Well, I mean, your judges change. the pieces the judges are looking at and saying, well, is this piece stronger than this piece? That changes. But we work very hard to change up the judges. We have a very distinct criteria that our former chairman, Ed Jonas, helped to craft, isn't that available on our website, Chris?
It is, and it is very specific about technique and, mastery in the medium that you've submitted. And then in addition to that, so if they've met all those criteria, the anatomy, mastery in their medium, then beyond that is aesthetic, and then have they been able to communicate? And so there is a very strict criteria that we all refer to before the judging starts. But then we also have a two-step process. And I think it's really worked well through the years. I've been in every judging that's gone on, and I can speak to the serious nature that the judges take, the responsibility. And but one thing, Jeff, people may not know is that the initial judging is all anonymous. The entries are assigned a number, and nobody knows, none of the judges know who painted that painting. So when we pass them through, you pass through 1705, 1708, you're not passing through Paul Newton. And it is a panel also. And so it's a panel of 4 judges, and I think we went through about 8 rounds, Shane, this year, a few more than what we've done in the past because we had so much good work. And so the first round, any judge can pass through a painting, so it can get 1 yes. And then we go on steps from there. So second round, 2 yeses. And then to get in the room, you have to have all 3 yeses. So all judges have to agree to move something forward. And even then, I think we had, Shane, do you think we had about 50 that were unanimous yeses?
And you get down to a point where it's very difficult to figure out how in the world are you going to get 20 out of this, incredible group of paintings and sculpture.
And
just
then
to be clear,
critique process after that. Jeff, it's an very interesting critique process after that when you get to the 50 for the 20 that actually come in the room. Is there anything in the composition that, would put one over the other? Is there anything in the application of the paint or the way the clay was handled? And so it is an individual critique after that, and it takes a lot of hours.
Yeah. So just to be clear, when you refer to in the room, you're referring to in the display hall and being one of the top 20 finalists.
Yes.
Is it 20 or 25?
It's 20.
20. Right. Okay. Man, yeah, that sounds awful because you guys, awful is probably not a fair word, but you guys have invited me, which I'm honored to do and happy to do always, but to judge smaller shows like members only shows.
The members only competition.
Yeah.
I think you've judged a couple of those categories for us.
And it's nowhere near that many, and it is really hard to do.
It's weighty. I agree with you. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it. It must be really difficult. Yeah, well,
it's a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of discussion. But then once they are once that 20 are selected and they go to wherever we have the conference and they're in the room, and then we have our final 4 judges that work together. The first thing they do when they're walking around to assess is they have a guide sheet. They have a point system for how many points they might give one painting over another. Chris helped develop that with her husband, Ed. And what we do is we let each of those judges individually look at all of the room first and then say, well, this is what painting I would give this number of points, and I give this painting this number of points. And then we compare the 4 judges' results and see if they're beginning to have anything that aligns. If they're starting to say, oh, look, all 4 have said this is an exceptional piece of art, so let's talk about that. And then we start to move from there. But there's been a few years where there was a stalemate. We had a judge that just said, hey, I just cannot, see eye to eye with the other judges on this. And then you have to, they have to sit down and hash it out and discuss it. And someone has to, if they're an advocate for a particular piece, they've got to really express why that is, or if they're not. And we've never ended up with we've always had complete a consensus on the finalists in the end, but it doesn't come easy every year. And sometimes a judge really has to spend a lot of time thinking about making the final decision to go with maybe the other judges. But those judges are each expressing to that one judge, or maybe two, why it is that they feel this is an exceptional painting. So it could not be more seriously taken by each judge. I mean, they consider it to be a great honor to be one of the judges, but they also know the effects that it has on each person that has spent so many hours working at their craft and then submitting their paintings or sculptures or drawings to this competition.
You know, one thing that many of us have noticed, and I don't know how intentional it is, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but the Portrait Society seems to be evolving with the contest. The contest seems to be becoming more like the figurative painting society. You know, and Paul Newton, obviously this is a very traditional portrait, and many of the submissions are what you would expect a portrait to look like. But then occasionally, like a few years ago, you get Daniel Keyes, who won one that was more like an interior with a couple figures in it. And that field felt like a very revolutionary moment in the Portrait Society. And then this year, Sean Lay submitted one where the head had to be like the size of a thumbnail, very insignificant. So I wanted to get, and this isn't a critique, by the way, this is just an observation, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Is this like an intentional evolution, or is it just something that's sort of happening organically? How do you see this evolving, and where do you see it going in the future?
Well, I think there has been some evolution in that from day one, when the organization was formed, even though it was artists that considered themselves professional portrait painters, they also considered themselves artists first. And that ties back to something Sargent insisted on his own students think about, and that was to not be, quote, a portrait painter, but to be an artist that could apply their skills or techniques to any subject matter. Mm-hmm. And I can remember, Christine, you can remember too, very early on, even though it spoke to a lot of people to say Portrait Society, Ray Kinster was one of the dissenters in the naming of the organization, because he really, even though he was a portrait painter himself, he was also a figurative painter, he was a landscape painter, he was a still life painter, an interior painter. And so he believed that that was very important and very valuable. So even though we left that sort of moniker of Portrait Society there as our subtitle, we have long called ourselves a portrait and figurative. I created a new word there, portraitive, portrait and figurative organization, that supported those things. But as you noted too, and it has been evolution, you have seen people like Daniel Keyes win with a piece that had two figures in a very large still life painting is one way of looking at it, with all of the flowers that were there, but the figures were a very important part of that composition. But we've included in our faculty over the years artists that were painting figurative works, maybe some portraits, but they might have been known mostly for their landscape work or for their still life work. And so my question to any artist that says to me, how is that valuable in what you're doing with the Portrait Society? And I say, have you ever painted, or have you ever seen any significant group of portraits that didn't include landscape, interior, still life, you name it? It's a part of being a portrait painter that you apply your skills to those different subject matters that can be a part of your portrait or your figurative piece. Mm-hmm. And, there was an artist once that said to me, I'm not a landscape painter. I'm just a portrait painter. A very, very accomplished artist. And I said, no, you're absolutely not. You are a landscape painter. You're a still life painter, because I've seen your work. You include those things as part of your compositions all the time. So maybe he didn't think of himself as a pure landscape painter, but he was a landscape painter. And mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons that I have also been a champion of increasing the number of artists that are a part of the organization and a part of our lectures and demonstrations that are not simply portrait painters. They are artists that paint portraits, and it has enlarged and has grown the repertoire, and it has increased an artist's skill level and awareness of how important all of those things are at creating good, solid portrait figurative pieces. Now, we also had, as you noticed, the sort of we've had some fantasy style pieces, some allegorical pieces where the figures are quite small. And even though they are small, the incredible skill level at these paintings, phenomenal. And I would argue that the figurative piece, maybe the figure itself was fairly small in the overall composition, but certainly that did not mean it didn't carry incredible weight, and it did. And so, yeah, it has, in my opinion, and Chris, you can add to this, or you can disagree with me, but I think it has been a conscious effort over the evolution of our organization.
I think it's been very intentional over the evolution. Yeah.
Oh,
And
I think
it was
it's a good
very
move.
consistently encouraged by Ray Kinsler, and keeping our eye on that, I think has really broadened our whole base. Because when we started out, we had 400 members, and now we have 4,000. And so I think we are about connecting and inspiring and educating, and that includes the whole figure.
So what did Jeff? What did Ray Kinsler tell his students when he taught for 50 years? What did he tell his students who said to him, I really want to become a better portrait painter? The first thing he would say is, have you ever painted plein air? I want you to get outdoors and paint plein air, because I want you to learn to move quickly and capture the essential effect of what it is that you've got to capture before the light changes and before the mood changes. Well, there's no better training than when you have a model sitting in your studio or on the model stand. The moments are fleeting. So you have to get that essential character, or if you don't hone those skills. So one of the best training grounds he felt like for a portrait figure painter was to go out and paint pure landscape with the fleeting and changing effects of light.
I think that's why in the members only competition, we've expanded those categories to include still life, landscape, outside the box, and just to encourage that.
Yeah, I think it's a great move. And because I mentioned Sean Lay's painting, it was extraordinary. And I'm really glad it was chosen as one of the finalists.
It looked wonderful in the room too. We loved having that different point of view in there. I just thought it looked fantastic.
Yeah, it really did. But also, again, to go full circle, it just occurred to me, I wonder if this evolution is also part of what's drawing the younger crowd.
Oh, I would agree with you, because they are very, again, I'm so fortunate to have this very talented daughter who's 21 years old, and my daughter Maddie, and Maddie is so into the concept of being a whole artist, of an artist that wants to paint people, but she also wants to paint all the other things that interest her, that come to mind, that she wants to do. And so, I think I influenced her in that thinking, but it also comes naturally. But I think that younger artists see that as well as we've ever seen it, and they have so much information at their fingertips compared to what we did in terms of the online stuff. And then I think what we are able to do is provide that in-person experience at our conference that they want, to have that interaction, so they can marry that with that absolute encyclopedia of information that is on their phones, that they can find anytime. I watch Maddie, sometimes she travels the world on her phone. She goes into major museums and she can pull up these high-res images of the paintings from any museum, you name it. And Kinsler used to say to me when I was a young artist, so I'm in my 20s, and we would be sitting here in the studio talking and looking at books, and he would say, do you have any idea, or can you truly fully appreciate the fact that you're holding a book with fantastic color reproductions? When I was your age, books were in black and white,
Man, that's crazy.
Jeff, I have to brag on Maddie just a little bit. In addition to being a dedicated and talented artist, she was the one that created the 25th anniversary video that was shown at the banquet. And it is just a treasure look back at the Portrait Society. And I don't know how she did it, but she somehow portrayed the heart of the Portrait Society in that video. And we're going to post it on our website, but we're just really grateful that she's multi-talented. So very, very thankful for that.
She's a special girl.
Well, so many of your students, so many of the young artists are. It's incredible. They are truly, each generation is truly standing on the shoulders of the generation before. And we're seeing a incredibly talented group of young people right now. I'm sure in many ways the most talented that have ever existed worldwide. and they
Yeah, I
are
would agree with that.
feeding off of each other. I mean, they are learning from
Yeah.
each other quickly. It's almost like you're dealing with these. It's like, from my perspective of doing this 35 years, the level of the young person right now is probably at the level of someone that was 25 years into their career just a generation or two ago, and they're starting out that way. I mean, they have been so had access to so much so early. And you know, the other thing that I admire about all of them is you do get a, you know, despite all of this stuff people are talking about, the, you know, this generation is this, that, and the other negative. What I see from this generation is an incredible desire to want to work and to work hard and to and they understand they have to dig at it. And I know that there's all the suggestion that they're not patient, and I don't see that with the students that I have. It's just the opposite. They realize they're having to put in the time, and it's going to take time to grow and develop. But you know, many of them are going to, as I said recently, many of them are going to be overnight successes in the next 10 years. But they will put the time in. I know they will.
So
Yeah, I would agree with that.
another question I have about the contest, maybe you could talk a little bit about what the rules are of the contest for those who are planning on doing in the future, because lots of things are changing. And I wasn't even thinking about talking about this today, but I do kind of, if for some reason occurred to me, and I'd love to get your opinion off the cuff on this. But like now we've got AI coming in. It used to be, I mean, all this technology is starting to get involved in art making. And I wonder if you guys have thought about how that is going to,
Oh, yeah. No, I've been thinking
what's
about
going to
a lot.
happen with AI, and how are you going to allow that in the contest? Are there going to be rules on how much technology is available or used in paintings, or is it just wide open, or are there going to be categories? Maybe, have you thought much about this?
I've been thinking about the artificial intelligence thing a bunch because, so for an example, I am sitting here and I'm thinking about a painting I would like to do, and it's in my imagination totally right now. So in the past, what would I do? I would either sit down and begin to doodle and come up with little thumbnail sketches, and then I'm going to go out and try to see if I can find my resources, wherever that be, whether it be on the street or if I bring a model in the studio and I start to compose these things. Or I now sit down with my computer and I say to it, you know, whatever my artificial intelligence app's called, I say, Jeannie, I have this vision of painting a man sitting at a bar in Spain, and he's got a green hat on, and suddenly it creates several visuals from my ideas, and then I start tweaking them. So my question to myself is, do I have a problem with that as, let's say, a resource for then the artist to use, just like I would pin photographs up around me? But I'm now pinning up one that the computer actually came up with, but it was from my prompts, you know. And we haven't even discussed it formally as a board or an organization, but my feelings are right now that that's okay, that that's cool. You know, to say I'm going to embrace this as just one more tool is fine. What I don't think is fine is if you tell the Genie that you're going to, I'd like you to paint this for me, you know, digitally. I want you to create this, and you know, here's my idea. Now you do it. I don't think we're going to be accepting submissions as, you know, there was a person that had the idea, but there was a machine that created the work. You know, there's this whole thing now, you know, Jeff, that there's this thing with contemporary art school. You have the artists, which are the people that come up with the concept, and you have the makers, which are people like us who can then implement it. Well, you know, I'm not really for our organization. I'm speaking for myself, but I would be encouraging Christine and our board to not go there. That we do not want to go to a place where someone walks in the room and they said, "Hi, my name is Jeff Hines, and I came up with this great idea, but here's Maddie Ree Neal who actually painted it for me, but it's my work." Or here's my, you know, artificial intelligence.
We want the artist's hand to be in the work.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. But what about, so this is another thing. So we get entries sometimes where it is a digitally produced image, let's say on a canvas, and someone has, for lack of a better way, let's say someone has touched it up, you know, they've enhanced it. Well, there's even some cultures that don't necessarily see that as problematic. You know, they say,
yeah.
Hey, you know, this is just another tool. And so you get into these really kind of challenging discussions about, what is acceptable or not. So I think there's some point at which we just, as our organization, have to say, well, this is what we have deemed that we are looking for us as the Portrait Society. We're looking for this.
And right now, Jeff, right now those guidelines do include that it has to be the artist's own idea and concept, and it has to be executed by that artist. And so, a computer generated or created in a classroom where the instructor has set up the model and the composition and you're painting it, those are not allowed right now. But we do talk about this, and I think as a board we're going to have to put that in our prospectus. We're going to have to come up with a policy and include that in our prospectus.
So Jeff, when you go back in time, so there was an artist who used to work in this building named John Johansson, who was an amazing artist. And he was taught to paint and draw in the 19th century, but his career spanned into the 20th century. And I went into a courtroom in Philadelphia once, and there were paintings hanging salon style all around the room, and you could just see the stars. You always know when there's a fabulous painting. And I saw this incredible painting. I walked across the room to look at it, and I saw this painting. It was by John Johansson. I thought, well, of course it's by Mr. Johansson. He was an amazing artist. And then I looked down below his signature, and he had written below his signature the words "from photographs" on the painting. Wow. From 1930. And so I realized that he had straddled this time of artists trying to come up and wrestle with this idea. Do I use photographs? Do I not? Can I tell people I'm using them as part of the resource for my painting? Do I not? You've got someone like Akins, who's really one of the first to just boldly say that this is part of my process. I'm using these photographs to paint from. And then others like Mr. Johansson, who's saying, I've got to tell people I use photographs as part of this. So, these debates are always ongoing with artists about embracing new technologies, new ways of producing their work. And I think that we are trying to grow with the times, but also think there are certain things that we still deem to be not enough of the artist's actual hands and their own hands involved in the production of the work, or their own minds. I mean, that's the other thing. It's a little tricky as we talk about this artificial intelligence thing. It's really wild. It's a new world. It's the Wild West right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I asked. That's very interesting. It sounds like you kind of know how you feel about it, but the door is not closed yet. Like we're just kind of wait and see a little bit.
I had an author here a couple of weeks ago, and he said he sat down with his wife, and he's a well-known author. He's written a number of very important books. And he sat down with his wife, and he said, I won't say his name, but he said to the AI thing, write a original essay in his voice. And 10 seconds later or less,
it's crazy.
The computer produced an original essay, and he and his wife read it aloud and then looked at each other and said, I wrote it. I didn't write it, but I wrote it. It sounds exactly like anything that I would write. And it scared him. He said, it's kind of frightening to think that I can tell the computer to write something in my voice. Well, I'm sure that we're going to be very soon, if not already there, where you can say, produce a Jeff Hines original painting, and it would digitally on the screen appear. You might could print it out on a piece of canvas, and it might not be anything you've ever actually painted, but it'd be so much in your hand that I would swear it's a Jeff Hines. There's something, though, I didn't ask this author, I didn't ask this question because I was so amazed by the story, but I have looked at a number of these things that are in the style of Rembrandt and the style of you name the artist, and I'm telling you right away, that skill level is there, but there's something missing. There's some bit of heart.
Some soul thing missing,
Some soul is missing. It's cold. You feel it right away. I don't think you would have to be any person of any unique sensitivities to know there's something missing. And so I don't know if there'll be a point where Hal, actually begins to feel something, and it sort of mimics emotions. But right now, I don't think the emotion is there. But as human beings, we have sensitivities that we can't even enunciate. We don't even know how to describe them to you, but we know it intuitively. We can feel whether there's a spirit of interest, love, appreciation, anger, whatever it is that might have produced that work of art. We sense it before we can ever express it verbally. And I think that right now we're at a place as an organization that we still want, as was done with Paul Newton's fabulous self-portrait, there was a sense of a human being coming through that you felt. And then he had everything craft-wise, technically, to support it. He had everything, every skill to support that and to communicate it to us as the viewer. And so we're looking for that combination of incredible skill level, technically, and the ability to tell that story, to tell us something about the person, the figure, the environment, that nobody else, no artificial intelligence can do it, not yet.
Can do that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a feeling.
Yeah. Well, I hope that, because, in the spirit of inclusivity, which you talked a little bit about before, where you said we
don't want to upset any computers.
Yeah. No. Yeah. But you talked about, I don't think you're doing in the name of inclusivity, but earlier we talked about how you want the show to be about the whole painter, the painter who, because you feel like a portrait painter is more than a portrait painter. A person who paints portraits should be able to paint anything. But on the other hand, if you're entering a cake contest, cookies are not cake, right?
That's right. Yeah, I get that.
So I wonder if it's nice to know that the Portrait Society is, in my personal feeling, is focused on the cake, right, and not the cookie.
Yes, and we're not going to hide at all or try to. We're not going to move away from what we consider to be. There's a certain level of traditionalism involved in what we do. I mean, some people call it realism. I actually sort of shy away from that, but I will say there are traditional, time-honored techniques and principles to sculpting, painting, drawing that we do champion and we do appreciate. I don't think you're going to ever see a finalist in our organization or our competition that maybe is a severed arm hanging from a string above, a campfire. I mean, it's just not going to happen in our. There's places for that, and there's organizations that will support that kind of work. That's just not what we are interested in promoting, and also, in many ways, kind of keeping alive and making sure that it is fostered and encouraged, because there are so many solid truths of working as artists that will benefit you, whether you decide to stay in that particular, let's say, that's that sort of traditional style or not. If you have that as part of your background, as part of the brick lane of your education, it will enhance whatever approach you decide to take with your work. So right now, in this day and time, when there are so many people pushing the envelope in so many parts of our lives, we feel like we're comfortable with whatever level of the envelope we've pushed, but we're also never going to lose sight of who we are as an organization. We're going to continue to boldly be who we are going forward.
I want to change the subject a little bit. So one of the things that we had a lot of people come from out of the country this year. We already mentioned Sean Lay, and then there were several other. My name is Paul Newton, right? He was also from Australia. We had several from England.
Yes.
Yeah, and a bunch of them. I've talked to all of them, and a bunch of them said something to me, which I'm well aware of, and that is that there's an unusual level of goodness and kindness at the Portrait Society conference. And these are people that have been to other conferences. I know this sort of sounds corny and stuff, but I think it's worth talking about. I'm curious as to why that is. I mean, you guys have been here from the beginning. What is it about this conference, and is it something that just happened organically or something that you guys have nurtured?
Jeff, I am convinced that it is a giving nature because of how we first started the Portrait Society. So I don't know if your viewers know this, but we have an advisory board as well as an executive board. And they are not paid positions. They give up their time. And in the beginning, it was hours and hours of time. Of course, when you're forming something, from nothing, there's a lot of investment of time to get it right. And So the board serves. Shane writes for the magazine and for the journal. And Wendy serves as our secretary treasurer, Mary White, Don Whitelaw. They all, when we have issues, we get on a phone call together and they all give up their time. It's not a paid position. All of the faculty pay for their own travel and they don't get a stipend or honorarium from us. The volunteers, there's 35 to 37 that come. They don't get paid. And I think when you're giving yourself to something that's bigger than you, I think it creates a spirit that is one of generosity, and it almost makes you want to then also be part of that and give of yourself too. And that's my reasoning of it. I'm not quite sure, I don't know what Shane thinks, but I just feel it's like we're all have the same rope and we're pulling all in the same direction. And when you get new people, they're like, oh, they just are all giving of their time. I've got to get in on this and give, what I know and share what I know. And I think because we're a nonprofit that we've created this synergy of connection, but also of generosity of spirit. And I think you can feel it. And it was particularly present this year.
I mean, it is absolutely proven over and over and over again throughout the eons of time that if someone has a kind nature or a generous nature, it tends to spread. It's just someone who maybe doesn't even think of themselves as being that type of person. But when they're confronted with that attitude, it makes a difference. And they begin to think, well, wait a minute, maybe I don't mind sharing a little of this or that as well. And I think that we go back to some of our founding fathers, Gordon Wetmore, who I hope his name will live on forever in the world of portrait and figure painting, was a very kind and gentle man who loved to share. He loved to quote that famous Kennedy line about a rising tide lifts all boats. Ed was the same way. Christine's husband, Ed, was just of such a sense of community, of wanting to lift up as many people as he could with sharing information and knowledge, and was also the very first person that would want to pick up the phone or send an email to a member or a member of his team or his board that maybe was having a tough time or he'd heard some news about the loss, and he would be one of the first emails you'd receive or letters you'd receive. I mean, that generosity of spirit, Tom Donahue, one of our first founding members of the board as well. I mean, just this incredible kindness and generous spirit has spread. It's attracted more people with similar kinds of ideas about that attitude. And as I said, I think it's affected even those that didn't even realize that they could be as generous as they have now found themselves being, because they've just kind of caught the spirit. So it's been there from the beginning. And also there's that other thing too. It was that we've talked a lot about. It was actually never about the artists that formed this organization or have found themselves on stage or in the limelight. They have some of them have reluctantly accepted those positions because that's not the kind of, they would think, wait a minute, I'm not trying to seek any attention. I just want to teach. I just want to share. But when they find out that they actually are a motivating force by their sheer presence and people hearing their voice and seeing their face, it helps to motivate and encourage, and they're willing to do it. But there's the egos have always been so in check, and I have particularly been proud of being a part of an organization that has made sure that that everyone is highly respected, and everyone has a high regard for each other, and each and every member of the organization, really truly is appreciated, and at every level of the organization. And I mean, again, when I was talking to a friend of mine who had painted a while back, he said, there's very few organizations that you go to in a variety of fields where people will just say, hey, you want to know how I do this so well? Just ask me. I'll tell you everything I know. They don't think of it as competition at all. They think of it as like, oh, I want to tell you why I'm able to do this better. It was because this and this artist told me, or after years, I finally figured it out. and here's what I've learned. So
Oh.
that's very different with artists.
Not to mention they paid several $1,000s to be there to give you that for free.
That's right. That's right. And that just catches. It just spreads. That generosity just spreads.
Yeah. So Chris, did you know that going into it? Was this, and maybe that's not a fair question because sometimes you don't even know why you do things. But I mean, when you decided to make this, you and Ed decided to make this a nonprofit, did you know going into it that it would be a draw for other generous people and created such a positive, uplifting environment?
Well, we knew that education was the sole purpose. And so I think that helped in some regard, but we were all very committed to it. In fact, Jeff, the first year that I left, I worked for the Florida trial lawyers. And the first year that I worked for the Portrait Society, I didn't accept a salary because we didn't really have any money.
Right.
Each board person put in $200 each, and that was our bank account. And we took it out an ad in American Artist Magazine for membership and for our first conference. And I worked the first year for no pay. So I've always believed in the organization. I don't think that, that Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, I love that book. And I don't think that we had the vision of what it is today. I'm really, really proud of it. But I think we did know that there's information that has been handed down from artist to artist over the years, and the frustration of not being able to get that information, I think, spurred it, and having it be a nonprofit and education oriented group did grow it. So I don't think we could have imagined what it is today, but the commitment was always there for it to be an organization that connected people and a bridge between professional artist and emerging artist, and a conduit to share information.
That's great. So what's next year? Are we back in Atlanta? And is it still the
We are back in
$50,000?
Atlanta, and we're already planning next year. We're going to include some more hands-on classes and opportunities, because we did get that back in our return surveys, and then we'll add faculty, new faculty and some returning faculty, but we'll plan that over the summer. I've got some ideas already, and I know that Shane's got some ideas, and we spend about 2 months just gathering offers from artists. I'm interested in teaching this topic, and then we look at our time, and it's like a big puzzle, and we move it around and build the best program we can.
That's great. So the second half of that question, is the prize next year going to be $50,000 again?
Well, so Chris had just texted me recently to ask me that very question, and I said, let me think about it, because I was so worried about not being able to raise that money last year. Actually, I kind of went out on a limb early on, and I said, Chris, if for some reason we don't raise the money, I will come up with the money somehow. And I didn't know how, but I thought I'll come up with it somehow. And I was a little nervous for a few months, worried that maybe I would have to figure out a way to get out and pedal and sell a few more paintings.
Yeah, they came in the last 2 days.
No
the last couple
kidding.
of days, we had so many people come in, but it worked out beautifully. And again, as you know, what's so fantastic about and beautiful about the organization is that all the artists that are entering or who are supporting the prize money, I mean, they are sharing a gift of $50 or so to submit these paintings, and then that money goes into what becomes the prize money. That funds the prize money, which is not an unusual way for these things to work, but it's just that what I love about it again is it's other artists working hard to share with other artists. I mean, they are really a part of the lifting up of each of these people who have been highlighted. But we had it was fully funded by all of the artists worldwide who wanted to submit pieces and take a shot at it themselves. And then they turned around and honored the very best work that was there with their gift, which became the prize money. So we'll see. I want to talk about it with Chris and the board, and we'll see if we can. But we definitely were looking for a way to celebrate our 25th in a very big way. And we were already giving 25,000, which of course worked nicely, 25 and 25, but we all thought we just wanted to do something even bigger for this milestone.
Yeah. All right. We'll all be on pins and needles wondering if it's going to be 50,000 again.
Well, and Paul Newton said to me that 50,000 turns into more like 75,000 Australian dollars, and he said
Oh, wow.
he was getting a little bump. He said he was
Wow.
very excited.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is exciting.
That's really nice for him. Dang. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Well, is there anything else that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to bring up before we end the conversation?
Well, the one thing I'd like to say is, first off, thank you for having us. And secondly, thank you for what you're doing, because these podcasts are just reaching so many people. And I had a number of people I've been interviewed, as Chris has as well, with you in the past. And I had so many people that came up to me and told me that they had listened to the podcast that you and I had done together
Oh, great.
some months ago. And so thank you for what you're doing to, again, add and spread knowledge and information. It's certainly in the spirit of what we do at the Portrait Society. And we're grateful to have you on the faculty and grateful to be a part of your podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. And
And
Chris?
now I've got to go save a kitten.
Okay, we better end this quick. Chris, did you want to say something quickly so we can do that?
No, just thank you also. I think it's great, Jeff, and I've watched a lot of your podcast and glad to be part of it.
All right, thank you. And thank you for everything you guys do. It's and thanks for involving me in it too. It's always been such an honor and great to be part of it. So we'll see
we
you
love
next year.
having you.
Take care, guys.
Thanks so much.
See you then.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.